Dateline Sunday. It's the question on everyone's mind. Should you be vaccinated against anthrax?
We do not have enough anthrax vaccine to vaccinate the public.
But are there risks?
I had a significant chance of coming down with an illness that I would have to deal with for the rest of my life.
The vaccination question. Dateline tonight, 7/6 Central on NBC.
Lily Sobieski, Hank Azaria, David Schwimmer, Donald Sutherland, and John Voight. Based on the true story. Uprising, NBC tonight.
Harry Potter Behind the Magic, coming in 1 week on NBC.
Finally this evening, coming to terms with a new reality in America since September 11th. The threat of terrorism as a fact of life in this country. As a class project last Monday, some New Jersey students got advice on making the adjustment from students almost 6,000 miles away. Here's NBC's Rahima Ellis.
Good, okay. As I understand, you have some questions for us first?
High school students at Bergen Academies in New Jersey in a video conference, sharing thoughts with counterparts at the Ort School on the campus of Jerusalem's Hebrew University.
Right now you can tell that a lot of people are scared, a lot of people...
The topic, coping with terrorism as a part of daily life.
Now they emphasize security a lot. Like, we have to wear these ID badges.
What are some of the measures that your school takes to ensure that you're safe?
Our security is always high, and it was always checking the bags and getting inside the buses who go through the campus to, just to check the security in there.
At the New Jersey school now, increased vigilance. Checkpoints at every entrance. Police officers patrolling the hallways. Surveillance cameras monitoring movements more closely than ever. In Israel, tight security is the norm for everyone, not just students. Checkpoints stop cars entering the campus, trunks searched, handbags and backpacks opened for inspection. The day before this video conference, 4 people killed in a suicide bombing in Israel. From the Israeli students to the Americans, words of warning.
Naturally, we're afraid because it happens almost every day. There's terrorist attacks almost every day, so we feel it. But I think they're aware of it, and they're starting to understand that what happened to them, can happen again.
At the start of the school year, the 9th graders here at Bergen Academies in New Jersey were scheduled to spend the next 2 months studying the American Revolution. But September 11th changed the focus not only for the nation, but for this school, and what teachers decided students here needed to learn.
It was a wake-up call in many senses. And one of the ways, as an educator, it was a wake-up call to me that maybe I should do more in terms of helping my students understand different groups all over the world.
The U.S. students were comforted by what they learned about living with terror from the Israelis.
You don't see them all huddling in their houses, not going outside.
You have to have your life, and you have to try to keep on living.
And for 15-year-old Matthew Diamond, a personal lesson.
It lets me know that we're not alone in this, and that this isn't the first time that something like this has happened.
From young people accustomed to living with the threat of terrorism, reassuring lessons for others for whom life changed on September 11th. Rahima Ellis, NBC News, Hackensack, New Jersey.
That's NBC Nightly News for this Sunday. Now here's Stone Phillips with a preview of tonight's edition of Dateline.
Thanks, John. Coming up on Dateline, a war game with the U.S. Marines, and we'll take you along. The mission, find some fallen comrades and get to them before the enemy does.
The longer it takes, the more you could be
exposed we are, of course.
To enemy fire.
Of course. Speed is of the essence, but safety is also a factor in that as well.
The story coming up on Dateline. John?
Thanks, Stone. Tom Brokaw will be here tomorrow. I'm John Siegenthaler in New York, and I'll see you next weekend, if not before.
This is Dateline Sunday, November 4th, 2001. Tonight, she was having her 6th child. It should have been an easy birth, but not this time.
It felt like I was ripping open.
It started just after she was given a pill to induce labor.
I could tell then she was close to death.
A struggle for her life, but she says it's not the only shock she was in for.
When you heard about this warning, what did you think, Arlene?
Hoda Kotb with a common medical practice you may not even know exists and what it means to you. More cases of anthrax, more death. The number of cases is small but growing, and so is the concern.
There are so many odds against any massive attack, but it would be foolish to say it's impossible.
How can we protect ourselves? Since the military has a vaccine, Chris Hansen asks, what about the rest of us?
Is an anthrax vaccination down the road a silver bullet to protect us against further terrorist attacks like we've seen?
We'll have the answers from NBC's Terrorism Task Force. A war game with a deadly serious purpose.
Keep your head on straight, do what you're supposed to do.
U.S. Marines on a search and rescue mission. The job? Find some Americans caught behind enemy lines and get out fast.
The longer it takes, the more you could be exposed
we are, of course.
to enemy fire.
Of course. The real enemy won't make it easy. So Rob Stafford follows a game where there's no room for mistakes. A group of students out to see the city. One of their first stops, the top of the World Trade Center.
So when you stood on top of it, it made you feel proud?
So proud.
Less than a week later, it was gone. And these young people had learned one of life's hardest lessons.
Freedom is not without a cost. It's not free. How many?
Edie Magnus on the field trip one class will never forget. They were days of desperation and courage. Young people who faced history's most terrible evil and decided to fight back. He was one of the brave band who all alone took on the world's most powerful and vicious fighting force, and for a time stopped it cold.
But you believed you were going to die.
Yes. Keith Morrison with the story of the real-life heroes behind NBC's miniseries Uprising. From our studios in New York, here is Stone Phillips.
Good evening. When you have a medical problem, you count on your doctor to come up with the right diagnosis and prescribe the proper medication. What you might not expect is to be treated with a drug that's won FDA approval, but has not been approved for your condition. It happens more often than you might think. Tonight, the story of two women and the drug they were given during a time that should have been among the most exciting of their lives. Here's Hoda Kotb.
It happens every day, and yet it never ceases to be a miracle. Each new soul starts out as the others have down through the ages.
Oh, baby, you're gorgeous.
But the deliveries and chances of survival at the dawn of a new millennium are quite a different story. Of the thousands of American women who will give birth tomorrow, 1 in 5 will have her labor induced. That's double the rate of just 10 years ago. Experts say many late-term complications that once hurt or killed mothers and babies are now being avoided by inducing labor early. And that, some say, may be part of the reason why the infant mortality rate in the U.S. is now at an all-time low.
Good news, but some say it may have come at the cost of too many tears and tattered lives. This tiny pill, now hailed as one of the most effective and popular labor-inducing drugs ever, is actually not approved by the FDA for that use. This drug is called Cytotec, and though generally considered safe today, critics say that for years, practitioners have put the lives of unsuspecting women and their babies at risk by inducing them with Cytotec before it was adequately tested.
Women like Arlene Matika of Fort Myers, Florida.
Arlene, did they tell you how they were going to induce labor?
No, I just assumed it was Pitocin.
Arlene Matika and her husband Dave had been there before. Of their 5 previous children, 3 had had their births induced with an IV drip of Pitocin. a drug that had been the standard labor-inducing drug for years. So in November 1998, with their home video camera rolling, the Matikas say they thought they knew what to expect. But instead of starting her labor with Pitocin, Arlene says the hospital's nurses vaginally inserted a small white pill. Only later would she learn the pill's name, Cytotec.
Did that strike you, Arlene, as odd that there was no IV drip?
Well, no, because it has been 8 years since we had our baby before that. And so I thought, boy, a lot of things have changed. They must have really improved on Pitocin.
Arlene says that once her contractions began, they were unrelenting and extremely painful, unlike anything she'd experienced with her other children.
Something was different, and the pain on my left side was excruciating.
What did it feel like?
It felt like I was ripping open.
In fact, she was. After her sixth daughter, Emily, was literally pulled from her body, Arlene had to be rushed into surgery because she was bleeding uncontrollably.
Well, I could tell then she was close to death. I just kept thinking, you know, what am I going to do without my wife? You know, how am I going to raise 6 daughters by myself? A newborn. You know, I was just like, it was like a big bad dream.
Inside the operating room, surgeons discovered that Arlene's uterus had sustained a massive rupture. Though an emergency hysterectomy saved her life, no one could tell the Matikas what had gone wrong.
I've heard things like, well, she had too many children.
So you weren't satisfied with that, Arlene, with that explanation?
No, my mother had 11 children. And if she was young enough, she still probably would have more. So I knew that was not the right answer.
Still, that might have been the end of it if Dave and Arlene had not come upon this, the packaging insert and label warning that comes inside a box of Cytotec. It shows a pregnant woman with a red slash through her.
When you heard about this warning, what did you think, Arlene?
Couldn't believe it. It shows a pregnant woman with a slash through her. I mean, there's so many drugs and things you're supposed to watch out for when you're pregnant. They tell you not to take.
Arlene wanted to know more, so she began searching the internet for answers. It was there that she found an online community of women who'd also suffered uterine ruptures. Most of them had their labor induced, and some, like Danielle McCraney of San Diego, had also been induced with Cytotec.
It was not told to me what the name of this drug was. It was explained to me that it was a pill, and they cut the pill up to make the dosage smaller.
Danielle says she later learned the pill fragment was Cytotec. Like Arlene, she says she began experiencing intensely powerful contractions.
It's like a hot, burning hot searing knife that is cutting your abdomen open, cutting your stomach. It was intense.
In fact, Danielle says that searing knife was her uterus rupturing along the scar from her previous C-section. As a result, she says, her baby daughter was without oxygen for nearly 30 minutes and died a few days later. Danielle blames Cytotec.
The fact of the matter is it's not FDA approved for induction, and it should not be used for induction.
Sounds crystal clear, but the fact is it doesn't matter what the manufacturer or the FDA says. Cytotec is actually an anti-ulcer drug, but practitioners have known for years that one of the key side effects is it causes contractions in pregnant women. And because American doctors are allowed to use any approved drug in any way they see fit, Cytotec, the anti-ulcer drug, has become the labor-inducing drug of choice. It's called off-label use, and it's actually quite common in the United States.
Look, when the doctors about 10 years ago found out about this effect of Cytotec and decided to test it out to jumpstart labor, there was no scientific evidence that this was a good idea or not. They simply started doing it.
Dr. Marston Wagner is a retired chief of neonatology for the World Health Organization and an outspoken critic of the use of Cytotec as a labor induction drug. He says that when practitioners discovered that Cytotec was cheaper, quicker, and more reliable than other induction drugs, word traveled quickly.
And then they started in the chat rooms, you know, online, saying, hey, I tried it on 10 women, and this is what I found out. And I tried 100 micrograms, and gee, I think it was, oh, my God. So I'm going to try 50 next time.
Wait. There's not an exact amount that every doctor is giving to every single woman?
No, Because nobody's ever tried it before. They don't know. They got to just try out this dose and then try out that. The last 10 years has been spent trying to fine-tune the dose of Cytotec for induction.
Wagner says that dosage has gone from 100 micrograms, which is the size of the whole Cytotec tablet, to half a tablet, to a quarter tablet, and now even lower doses are being tested. Back in 1998, when Arlene and Danielle were induced, 50 microgram doses were considered standard, and Arlene's chart shows she got 3 of those. Though Cytotec supporters say the exact dosage is still being refined, they say the drug's overall effectiveness is unquestioned.
It is safe, it's effective, it works better than the current medications that are used.
Dr. Charles Lockwood represents the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, a professional organization for OBGYNs. His group established the first guidelines for the use of Cytotec 2 years ago.
Do we know the potential risks of this drug? Do we really know?
I think we do. The majority of adverse outcomes have been associated with people violating those principles, giving the drug at too high a dose, giving it too frequently, and in patients with prior C-sections.
Does the doctor tell the pregnant woman, the patient, just so you know, this drug is not FDA approved for this purpose?
I think that a doctor has to exercise his or her own discretion in deciding just how much a patient needs to know about the specific approval of a drug by the FDA.
As for Cytotec, it's unlikely to get FDA approval for labor induction because the drug's manufacturer says it has no intention of even seeking approval for that use.
I think that Cytotec is the standard of care for labor induction.
Dr. Alyssa Goldberg ought to know. She wrote a benchmark article reviewing the research that had been done on Cytotec, also known medically as misoprostol. Her article was published in the New England Journal of Medicine earlier this year.
How confident are you about the safety of Cytotec for women who use it to induce labor?
I think it's very safe.
Would you ever use this drug to induce labor for yourself?
As a matter of fact, I did.
You did?
I actually recently had a baby, and I was induced with Cytotec.
Easy delivery?
Easy delivery, beautiful baby.
Now, would you use this drug, this exact same drug, had you been pregnant 5 years ago?
5 years ago, I was a resident in training, and the hospital that I was working at was not using it, so I had no experience with the drug at that time.
Do you think 5 years ago, doctors knew enough about Cytotec?
Dr. Goldberg never did respond to that question. However, she did tell us that practitioners are still studying Cytotec to determine the lowest possible effective dose for labor induction.
I think we're still fine-tuning. I think there's still more to be learned. That's the way that medicine evolves.
But should we wait until after we learn it before we say it's safe?
It's kind of a catch-22. If you don't use it, then you don't learn.
While the number of reported cases of Cytotec problems is very small, the New England Journal of Medicine recently published another study concluding that drugs like Cytotec do in fact increase the risk of uterine rupture in women who have had a previous C-section. Women like Arlene Matika and Danielle McCraney say if they had been better informed, they would not have risked their lives or the lives of their babies with an unapproved drug. In fact, the Matikas filed a lawsuit against the hospital and staff that induced her labor with Cytotec. Lawyers for the hospital and staff have asked the court to dismiss the lawsuit.
Who do they think they are that they can just pick and choose what women they're going to use this drug on and then have something horrible like this to happen? It's awful.
In August 2000, Cytotec's manufacturer issued a warning about using the drug to induce labor. Some doctors who have used it for that purpose for more than a decade say it didn't become a hot-button issue until last fall when the FDA approved its use in medical abortions. They believe that's the real reason some critics want it banned.
Coming up, with more cases of anthrax and traces of it showing up all over the country, why can't we take a vaccine?
Given what's happened in the last couple of weeks, can you see why people would be wanting a vaccine for this?
Absolutely.
But it's not that simple.